today we're going to talk about points, lines, and planes. Let's get started. Our first term that we're going to talk about today is points. These points are an official geometric term, and they're one of the beginning levels of learning geometry. In order to talk about points, we really need to be able to identify a specific point out of an entire group of points. For instance, if I was looking at the picture on the left-hand side of the screen, I might want to be able to identify this particular point. In order to do that, I might say, okay, you're going to start at the top left-hand corner. I'm interested in the point that is 3 columns over and 3 rows down. That would be pretty easy. Most people could get to that point pretty easily from there. It does take a little bit of effort, though. Then we get to the points that are on the right-hand side of the page. These are a little bit more challenging. Say, for instance, I want to identify this point here. There are no columns and no rows for me to identify that point. So we had to come up with a system that would work no matter whether we had our points in columns and rows like those on the left, or if they were haphazardly scattered on the page like those on the right. So the naming system for points is as follows. Every point gets one letter name. That letter is going to be a capital letter. So we could name each point over here A, B, C, D, so on and so forth, until we got all the way to the end of the alphabet. Okay. On the right-hand side over here, we could do the same thing. You could have point A, point B, point C, point D, point E. And no matter which of these types of problems I gave you, you would be able to go to, say, point C, and you would be able to say, Ms. Rossi said I needed to find point C. Over here, if I was looking at these problems on the left, that's the, If I'm looking at these points on the left, that's this point here for point C. If I'm looking for point C on the left, that would be right here. On the right, that would be this point here. And so it doesn't really matter which kind of problem I've set up. You can still identify which point is point C really easily. And you'll notice that even on the left-hand side of the screen, it's still faster to say point C. You can go right there. You don't have to do any counting to find out which point I'm talking about. Okay. Now let's take a look a little bit more deeply at what happens when we put a whole bunch of points together. Oh, look, here it is. When we stick a whole bunch of points together, When we stick a whole bunch of points together, we get what's called a line. So if you zoom in on any line, you're going to get something that looks like this. I think it looks kind of like a string of pearls. And so each of these points would have its own letter for a name. Okay. And I'm just numbering them one on top, one on bottom, so that they're easier to identify. Okay. And so each of these points has its own individual name, and the line is what we're talking about when we zoom out from that a little bit and we see them all together in a row. Normally, when we draw a line, it's a little bit tedious to draw a whole bunch of little bitty points, and so we draw it more like this bottom picture here. And we also think it would be a little bit tedious to name every single point along an entire line. So whenever I want to name a line, I'm going to choose any 2 points on that line. For example, this might be point B and point G. That would mean that this is line BG. Okay? Now, we're going to be dealing with a lot of different types of things that look a lot like lines. So we have to be able to identify that this is a line with more than just the 2 letters. Okay? And I promise this will make a little bit more sense as we move on down the road. But for a line, you have to have the 2 letters, and then we put a line with 2 arrows on top. The 2 arrows mean that the line goes on forever and ever. It doesn't just stop at B and G. So that's going to be really important. So a line is always named with 2 points and a line with arrows on top of it. Somebody's probably wondering about now, what if there was a 3rd point in the middle here? Maybe point D is in here. How do I know which 2 points to pick? Do I have to put all 3? The answer is no, you don't put all three, and it doesn't really matter which 2 points you pick to name this line. So I could name this line BG, I could name it BD, with my line with my arrows over it, or I could name it DG, and I would still be talking about this one line that's on our screen here. Okay? So 2 letters and a line with arrows over the top for a line. Next, we're talking about a plane. A plane is going to be a flat surface that goes on forever in all directions. So our picture here on the right is actually the more accurate picture out of the two, because it has the arrows on each side here that show it goes on forever in every direction, like it's expanding. However, that gets, again, a little bit tedious to draw, so we normally draw planes or represent planes like the picture on the left. So that's more standard. Again, we might have more than one plane in a picture. For example, like the walls of a room are planes, and so there's 4 walls in my room. So I have 4 planes there, so I have to be able to distinguish between those planes. And so we name planes with 3 letters. And so this would be plane A, B, C. And if I was writing that name out, I would write plane A, B, C. And again, all of these have to be in capital letters. Everything we're naming today is in capital letters. That's really important. I could have named this plane D, E, F, and I would write it out as plane D, E, F. And so planes are always named with the word plane and then 3 letters. Okay? So anytime you see 3 letters, we're naming a plane. One final note on these is that it's really important to name them with 3 non-collinear points. So we need to talk about what non-collinear means. So first, let's talk about collinear. The key word here is line. Okay? So we have a line, and it is co-line. So co means together, right? Like a co-pilot is going to pilot with the pilot. And a line is a line. So we're interested in points that are together on a line. So for instance, in this first picture, we could draw one straight line that would go through all of those points. So those are collinear. Again, here I could draw one straight line that goes through all 3 of these points. They're collinear. Even if they're all spread out and they're not necessarily right next to each other, if I could draw one line through all 3 points, they're collinear. So these are collinear points. What we're interested in is non-collinear. So non means not. So in other words, not together on a line. For instance, you'll notice that I could draw a line this way. Okay? I could draw a line this way, or I could draw a line this way, but there's no way for me to draw one line that's a straight line, because remember geometry, lines are going to be straight. There's no way for me to draw one line that goes through all 3 of these points. So it's always going to end up looking like a curve if I try to go through all 3 points. So non-collinear means that they're not together in one straight line. So again, what we're interested in for a plane is 3 points that are not in a straight line. If I had another point here that was point G, I could not name this plane DGE. Okay, because these 3 points are in a straight line, and I'm not allowed to name them with points that are in a straight line. I really hope that this has been helpful for you. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you. Goodbye.